What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Dean, aka the Blue Crusader, and today I'm going to be bringing you another Minecraft mod showcase on a legendary magic mod called Thaumcraft. Basically, this mod lets you draw in energy from certain objects in the environment and in turn create power and make magic. This is also another old school legendary mod which I really wanted to go back and cover, so we're going to be going through all of the different features in the mod, like the biomes, the mobs, and the magical elements in this video. As usual, it's going to be time-stamped, so if you want to go in the video bar below, you can click to which part appeals to you, and a full written text guide will be linked in the description below, along with the download to the mod if you want to learn more and get the mod yourself. So as usual, since we have the Nature's Compass mod, we can actually use the Nature's Compass to go to the modified biome which is added in the mod. So this mod adds a new biome which is called the Magical Forest. So as you can see, this is a rainy biome, and I can find this with the Nature's Compass mod, which you should definitely download, and then we can click teleport and it's going to take me directly to this biome over here. You can see we're now inside the Magical Forest biome. So this is a pretty interesting new biome which is added in the Thaumcraft mod. Okay, this is a very luscious green biome which is kind of luminous, and you can see it's a very deep forest with quite tall trees. There's a different variation of tree types. We have some short trees and some very tall ones, along with a lot of these little mounds of mossy cobblestone around here and mushrooms. So this is kind of like an enchanted forest, which is really cool. Now in here, as well as these mushrooms, you'll find these big greatwood trees and silverwood trees over here which you can gather from as well as these small little mushroom items. Okay, which is called a Vishroom. This is basically to do with something in the mod called Viz, and this biome is a really good place to set up a base, okay? Now, along with just being a generally cool biome, you will actually find some pretty cool stuff in here. Now, there's the average mobs like usual, like we have pigs, but there's actually a brand new mob type, which you might actually find in the forest if you go wandering about for a while. Now, you can see this biome is next to a roofed forest. This is not a very big enchanted forest biome, so this magical forest is not really that great in size. So I'm going to go ahead and spawn the mobs which I'm talking about, because in our case, we've stumbled upon quite a small version of this biome. Now, there's this mob called Pechs, okay? These are called Pech Foragers, and if I spawn them, there's these really awesome, cool-looking mobs with these mouthpieces, custom 3D modeled, with these big barrels on the back, okay? And these are neutral, so if we wander about, even if we're in survival mode, these guys won't attack us, but they will pick up items that you drop, okay? So what if I go ahead and drop an item? I've just dropped a spawn egg, and these guys are going to go steal it. Even the Nature's Compass, which I used to get to the biome, they've just stolen it from me, okay? You can also trade with them. If you give them enough items containing something called Desiderium, you can also trade with these guys, okay? And as you can see, we have a file of Desiderium Essentia, and they're also going to pick that up too. So let's just spawn some of this stuff, okay? Let's just spawn tons of these crystals and drop them, okay? So I dropped tons of this stuff to this guy, and he's just going to steal it all. And after a while, he's not going to pick up any of it because he's already had enough. Now you can see he doesn't want this stuff anymore. But now he will go and pick it up. So there'll be a little bit of a pause between him picking stuff up. He'll kind of take a pause and then he'll go fill up his inventory with stuff that you drop again. So I'm just going to drop tons of these crystals. I'm going to drop a whole stack of this stuff. And then I can also go ahead and drop more of this stuff, files of Desiderium Essentia. So I'm just going to give him a whole stack. I'll just give him a whole stack so he's picked up loads of it. And now you can see something happens. These green particles go over this Pech Forager, and you can see something's changed. So now if we right click on him, we have this interface, okay? Now, there's an interface here where we can put an item input in, and there's also output slots here, so 4 output slots, okay? And then there's also an inventory, which is my player inventory. So if I would go ahead and just add stuff to my player inventory, let's just get some gold ingots. We can shift click those in, just a random item as an example, and there's a little dice which appears in the middle. So if we press on the dice, basically, it will give you something in return that's completely random. So now I click on the dice and it gives me bottles of enchanting and blaze rods, and I can keep doing this and keep trading with this guy, okay? Now, for some reason, he stopped trading with me. I think I need to give him more items now, so he's going to be friendly with me. But we can do this a few times, and it actually lets these guys trade, and we can get some pretty cool randomized loot from it. You can see there's actually a portal which is opened up called a Lesser Crimson Portal. So this is pretty interesting stuff. So this is also another feature which we haven't covered yet. Okay, so I've teleported to yet another magical forest, which is a little bit further away. So this is a much bigger forest, okay, which has a lot more stuff in than the last one did. So Now if we kind of go down, you can see there's a few new things which we didn't see here before. So now if I go into survival mode, you can see there's a tree type here which is new. Okay, so this isn't a vanilla tree. This is called a silverwood tree. So if we mine this, you can see this is a completely new type of wood. And basically these grow throughout the world, and I'm pretty sure they're not actually restricted to just the magical forest. And you can distinguish these because they have really bright white bark on them, and they have these really bright blue leaves. And they also have this item called a Shimmerleaf, which usually grows at their base, and sometimes you'll also find mushrooms. So this is the Shimmerleaf, okay? So you can see we found a few of these which grow at the base. So this is also another way that you can actually distinguish that these are actually the correct silverwood trees. So you can mine these, and as you can see, we can actually use this wood to actually create silverwood logs. But not only that, you can actually also get silverwood saplings from these as a drop, just like normal trees, but they're a little bit more rarer than usual. So it'll be a lot rarer to get saplings from these trees than something like an oak tree. Also, they can drop 0 to 4 randomly of an amount of these quicksilver items too. So that's also another loot piece that can actually be dropped from these trees. Now, these are super high, okay? So you might need to make some kind of ladder or scaffolding system to actually get up to the top to cut it all down. And you can see I've just got nausea. And I don't know how I got nausea. I think I actually got nausea from actually cutting down these trees. Now, like I said before, these are not entirely restricted to the magical forest. You do usually find these in the magical forest, but I do know that you can find these in biomes like the tundra and desert too. So you may actually recognize that you'll see these spawning in those biomes also. I'm not entirely sure if there's any other biomes which I missed out that these spawn in, but they definitely do spawn in those 3 primary biomes. So as you can see, I'm just going to mine all of this wood and try and get every piece of log so this thing will actually decay, okay? Because there's so many logs on this thing. Okay, I think I've actually got them all. So now this tree should start to decay, okay? Now this decays pretty quick, and then hopefully we'll get a sapling drop. So as you can see, if we put 1 silverwood log in the middle, it creates 4 silverwood planks, and this thing hopefully will give us some rare loot as it decays. So I'm just going to wait a few moments. Now down here you'll see we have actually got some of this quicksilver that I noted before and told you about. So that is one of the drops which we have got. And obviously we could just go around and really quickly use the shears on these leaves to make it go a bit quicker. And as you can see, that will give us the silverwood leaves too. So you can let it to decay and drop loot, or you can use shears and quickly get the leaves off it. Just as a quick example, you can see this is actually a silverwood log which is spawned in a standard biome. As you can see over here, this is actually spawned in a forest hills biome. So this does also spawn in forests and forest hills too. So they're not entirely restricted just to magical forests. There is also another type of wood which is called great wood, and these are great wood trees. Now I couldn't actually locate one of these so far, so I'm just going to kind of show you it artificially. Now this obviously won't be the shape of what the tree usually looks like, but I'm just going to kind of show you what the leaves and the actual saplings look like, as well as what the actual bark looks like. So as you can see, I'm just going to go around and create kind of like an artificial tree, just so you guys can see what the leaves look like. So it's something like this, okay, but a completely different shape. So this is kind of what the blocks look like with great wood, and you can make these into great wood planks too, and you can also make them into stairs and slabs. Sometimes you can also get a sapling drop, and these have the chance to spawn in all biomes, but you'll find them in magical forests primarily, just like we did with the silverwood. So in desert biomes, you'll find these little plants called Cinderpearls, which we can gather if we punch them. So these are plants that we can place down and pick up, and they kind of have this appearance that they look like candles. It's kind of like a candle as a plant, and it gives off these flame particles. So they should be pretty easy to see, especially at night time. Okay, and these are actually converted into blaze powder. So if you put them in your inventory and then go into the crafting window, you can just directly turn these into blaze powder. So it's another way that you can actually gather this. I showed you already how you can find these Shimmerleaves. They just spawn next to silverwood trees. Now if we place the actual Shimmerleaf in our crafting window, we can turn this into that quicksilver stuff, which we also got as a drop from the tree. So that's what you would use that plant for. So along with this, inside the magical forest, you may have also seen this stuff. This is the Vishrooms. Okay, so this plant is basically found in magical forests, and when you walk over it, it will give you a nausea effect. So you may have been wondering why I got that nausea effect earlier. I even thought it was from mining the tree, but apparently it's from this stuff. So if you walk near it, presumably over it, it will actually give you nausea. Apart from that, they're not really used for much. They're not really very useful in the mod, but you can actually pick them up and gather them. So I've just gone inside a cave, okay? So inside this cave, I've found some of these really nice looking illuminating crystals. Now these look really nice and they glow, and as you can see, as you mine them, all of the crystals individually have break particles, and then they make this kind of ringing sound when you actually mine them with a pickaxe. And they drop these air vis crystals. So these air vis crystals are unique items which you can actually find in caves, and there's quite a lot of them over here. Now they're pretty easy to spot because they glow, and there's quite a lot of creepers down here, so I have to be careful. But they grow in these kind of pockets in the cave and form deep down below. Okay, this is extremely weird. I think that's the most creepers which I've actually seen in one cave at once. So let me just gather all this stuff. So as you can see, we also have some green ones. So we'll also go ahead and gather these. And these green ones are called Terravis crystals. So each of them have a different name, and these ones are called Perditio Vis crystals. Now, there's actually 6 types of crystals, and one of these correspond to each primal aspect inside the mod. So these grow in places where Viz is high, which is an element inside Thaumcraft, and is used to replenish aura inside the mod. I've also mined some new ore here. We have the Cinnabar ore, and also another type of crystal, which we didn't see before, which is called the Ignis Vis crystal. So there are a lot of new types of crystals underground, which also provide a little bit of a light source when you're mining. So not only is it something new that you can gather, it also kind of illuminates your way when you're underground, especially when you're low on torches. That can actually be a really useful thing. Now, I've stumbled upon a dungeon here, so I've actually got pretty lucky, and I've managed to destroy the spawner before too many mobs spawn. Now, unfortunately, I can't place these crystals back on the ground as a light source, but I'm going to go ahead and just take all these items before the zombies kill me. So, as well as the Cinnabar ore, which is this red stuff that we just gathered, there's also another type of ore, which is called Amber Bearing Stone, and this drops Preserved Curiosity and Amber. So as you can see, if we mine these, it has a few little drops which we can use. As well as this, there's also another ore here, which is the Nether Quartz, which actually does spawn in the overworld now, so you may notice that actually spawn in the normal world. Now, Amber Bearing Stone and Cinnabar ore, they're found very deep underground, so you're going to have to be at quite a low level when actually trying to search and mine for that stuff. As you can see, I found a little bit more here. Now, the best way to do this... Oh, God, okay, this is not a good place for a creeper to blow up. The best place to see is if you press F3, you can see what block level you're at, where it says block. So you want to be at a pretty low block level. This is the level which I'm at, and I've already found quite a lot of it. So you can use that as an index or a guide for where to actually find it if you don't really know where to look. As you can see, the Amber Bearing Stone, you can also use this in a furnace. So if I place a furnace down and just put a little bit of coal in, I can actually put the Amber Bearing Stone inside it, and instead of just mining it, we can directly smelt this into amber, which we already got as a drop anyway. So if you want to get amber, you can directly smelt this too. But there's no reason to actually do that, because as you mine it, it will drop amber. But if you mine the ore with Silk Touch and just get the ore, then you can still smelt it anyway. Now, as well as this, the Cinnabar ore, we can also smelt into something else. So if we put the Cinnabar ore inside the furnace, it smelts into something called Quicksilver, which is used in a lot of different crafting recipes inside the Thaumcraft mod. So you can see this smelts into Quicksilver, which is something which we already had in our inventory from mining it. Now, there's something in the mod which you may have heard me reference to earlier. I may have called it Viz inside the video, but there's something which is spelled V-I-S, which you may think is Viz, but this is actually pronounced as V, and basically V is kind of like a magical element or energy which is inside the mod, which I noted a little bit earlier, and this basically is generated inside different chunks, and there's a different level depending on the different chunk that you're in. Now, if you use magic in the mod, these levels per chunk will go down, but where you're absent, you will find more V across the world, and it will build up again, obviously, with the absence of you doing spells and things, and then it'll come back into balance. So it's a little bit confusing, but this is kind of like an element inside the mod. If you're wondering how to remember this or what to refer it to, just kind of remember the Force off Star Wars. It's kind of a very similar thing. Now, as you can see, I've actually found some more ore over here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and mine this. I found some more nether quartz, and over here, I found some more of this green stuff, which we collected before, the Terravis crystals. Now, one thing in the mod is something called aspects, okay? So I'm probably going to have to put a picture on screen as I'm explaining this right now, because it's a little bit easier, because I am referring to a text-based guide over here. So there's basically 37 different aspects in the Thaumcraft mod, okay? And basically everything is made up of aspects inside the Thaumcraft mod. There's 6 primal aspects and there's 31 compound aspects. Compound are made up of 2 or more other aspects, and there's actually a list of the primal aspects and compound aspects on the guide, and also what items you can actually find them in. So I'm going to leave a direct link below to all of the information in this guide. I'd refer to the text-based guide because it gives a little bit more information on the aspects, and it's something which you're going to really need to read up a little bit on because it's quite complex. So the primal aspects include air, terra, ignis, aqua, ordo, and perditio. So you may have noticed we actually have crystals which relate to these in our inventory, which we just collected in the cave. So these are related to the actual primal aspects in the mod. This is why there's actually 6 different crystals inside the caves. Those crystal types relate to those primal aspects. There's also compound aspects, which are basically aspects made up of other aspects, okay? Now, the whole list is over here. I'm going to put this on the screen because it's a lot easier for you to read, and you can also click the link below, but I'm going to put an image on the screen right now showing you all the compact aspects, and you can pause this video and take a look at them and look at all the combinations and read it for yourself. Then there's also the aspect sources. So these aspects are found in all vanilla and Thaumcraft items, and most of the mods too, but there are some mods which will not grant you any of these aspects. Now, there's a list below which I'm also going to bring up on screen because it's a lot easier than just explaining it, and it'll tell you which items will give you what aspects from the vanilla items in game. Okay, so let's take a look at something called Taint in Thaumcraft. Okay, so with the whole stuff around the world happening right now, think of Taint in Thaumcraft as a type of virus that spreads throughout the world. A little bit like the Escape and Run Parasites mod, when the parasites infect all the villagers and spread across the Minecraft world. That's a good analogy to think of. Okay, so we have 2 different mobs over here. We have the giant tentacle, which is this awesome mob which kind of comes out of the ground. It kind of reminds me of a squid tentacle, and obviously it spreads taint, so it's called a taintacle. And this is kind of basically a mob which has a boss health bar, and it has this really cool particle which looks like a water ripple above it. Now, there's another one called the giant taint seed. So if we place this down, this will bring this horrible looking appendage out of the ground, which will kind of just spread all this taint all across the floor. And basically this thing on the right, which is the taint seed, continues to grow slowly, and it continues to spread across the world and basically take over your world. Now, this will infect other creatures around it, and it'll turn other blocks into taint. So you can see it's already placing down this horrible purple stuff. So another way to think about this is like on Terraria, when you have the corruption which spreads across the world. It begins as a standard biome, and then it just kind of leaks across the world if you don't do anything with it, which is the same as the Hallow on Terraria Hardcore mode. This is kind of what Taint is on Thaumcraft, okay? And this will turn any block into Taint. You can see it slowly places kind of like an overlaying block onto any blocks around it, and after a while, like you saw just then, it will actually directly turn into a taint block. So now this sand has converted into taint soil. Okay, so this is pretty cool. Now, one really interesting thing, okay, is just because it infects the area, it doesn't mean it permanently does this. In fact, if we actually kill the giant taintacle, which is actually kind of hard, as you can see, the boss health bar at the top is for the giant taintacle, okay? But if we actually kill the giant taint seed, which is what we need to kill to stop this infection from spreading, you'll see something interesting happens. Now, this thing is just leaking all of its energy all over this place, and if we leave this thing too long, it's going to turn into a tainted wasteland. But if we kill it, as you can see, it will actually drop some unique items. It'll drop some of these Vitium Vis crystals, which is a type of those crystals just like what we found in the cave previously in this video. But once you kill the taint seed, the taint will quickly die off. But one thing to note is we do also have this giant taintacle nearby, which is going to cause a little bit of a problem too. Now, I'm not sure how we can get rid of this guy. Maybe we can just spawn like the biggest TNT stack around him and see what it does to him. Because this guy looks like he's going to be a bit of a problem. Let's surround this guy in a tower of TNT and then detonate it. So I will be with you guys momentarily when we've created a TNT shell enough to cover him and encase him fully in. Okay, we're just going to make a little bit of a roof. This whole thing's entirely hollow inside here. I'm just really curious how much damage this guy's going to take and if we can kill him with a standard TNT tower. Okay, hopefully this won't lag my computer. Okay, so just to put things into perspective, luckily I have a 3090, so that didn't really do anything in terms of my PC. But what's more frustrating is this guy is not losing much health at all. From all that TNT, this is how much health he lost. Just look at the boss's health bar. That's how much health he lost. That's ridiculous. But if we now use our axe, I don't know what it did. Maybe, like, it did something, but now when we use our axe, after using all that TNT, we can actually kill this guy. I think the reason why we can actually hurt him now is because you can see up here, these corruption blocks, or taint blocks, which he was surrounded by before, now they're not right next to him anymore, because he's dropped underground. So I think now he doesn't have any taint around him to actually protect him. So I think these giant tentacles, they kind of survive by using the tainted ground around them. So now this guy's pretty easy just to get rid of. Okay, so that was pretty interesting. And he's going to drop something called uncommon treasures. And usually, we're not supposed to be able to spam right click with these because currently we're in creative mode. But if we right click, it will actually give you loot. So I've got some ender pearls, some gold pieces, and diamond from that. Now, as you can see, there is all this tainted stuff over here. And there's this little drop here, which I didn't look at, okay? So this drop too, this is the primordial pearl. So he does drop some items which are very valuable. Now, you may be wondering, what can you do with this tainted stuff, okay? Because the taint on the ground will naturally die off after a while, but you can actually mine the tainted dirt. So, I could technically get rid of this and mine it away, but obviously if I'm using a pickaxe, it's going to take a while to mine it. So we can actually get rid of these blocks, but obviously this is corrupted ground, so if you stand on top of this for a long time, just like I am to mine this stuff, you will eventually die, okay? And now I've just fallen and died, but it does damage you progressively over time. Now, another thing which will be easier to explain by showing a few images and information on screen is another element in Thaumcraft, which is something called warp. Okay, so picture warp as something like your mind is warping or you kind of having warping thoughts. It's basically you going insane. So I like to kind of compare it to something in the game called the forest, where after a while you can go pretty crazy. If you kill enough cannibals in the forest, basically you can go crazy and start building like items like out of bones and heads and stuff, and you go like completely psycho. That's basically kind of what warp is in Thaumcraft. Okay, so as you go through the mod and you start using magic and getting some research going, basically some of it will display a purple swirl icon on it, and this means that when completing some of the research involved in the mod, you'll actually get something called warp. Now, warp is something which affects your mind inside the mod, and it's okay to have a little bit of it, but too much becomes a little bit of a problem in Thaumcraft, okay? This basically causes you to have visions in game, and it can also kill you. So the more you get exposed to, the more problematic this becomes. So basically, it's like you're going into a state of psychosis in Minecraft, which is actually pretty funny. So the more that you're exposed to, the more insane you go. So there's a little bit of a problem with using magic in Thaumcraft, and it also kind of creates this balance and power dynamic in the mod, which you need to actually have a balance too. So I'm going to show a few different pictures on the screen right now of some of the effects that you can get from warp. So the first one is sun scorned. So this makes everything appear bright, so it's kind of like you've taken something you shouldn't have done. And then there's also unnatural hunger, where everything becomes dark and it gives you basically like a semi-permanent hunger buff, so it's like you've eaten rotten flesh but overdrive. So before we actually begin in Thaumcraft, because basically all of this information I gave you before was kind of like a grand introduction to the mod, before we get started, there's some prerequisites we actually need to tick off our box. So if I go inside this chest, I've already prepared this earlier. So this is a chest which I prepared earlier with a few of the items that you need to begin in Thaumcraft, okay? So before you get started, you have to first kind of explore the world and get your bearings inside a new Minecraft world and get some equipment and items. And some of these involve following items in the chest. So we need some bookshelves, we need a cauldron, a stack of glass or more, basically as many as you can get. And all of these items, there's no harm in getting more than what I have. It's probably better to have a bigger supply. So you need paper or sugarcane, basically a good enough supply, so you might want to make a sugarcane farm to get a lot of paper. Then you need ink sacs, which you can get from squids, and as many of these crystal types as you can find. The best bet to find these is obviously going to caves like what I showed earlier, but you want to try and find as many of these crystals as you can. Now, it's best to find the 6 different types which I described earlier and at least get 1 stack of them. If you can get 1 stack of each, that's kind of optimal. Now, if we scroll up in the chat a little bit, there was a purple message earlier, okay? That was what happened when I first mined the first crystal we came into in the cave. So it says, your fingers tingle strangely as you handle the crystal. What does that mean? Maybe some rest will inspire you. So basically, this is a message which comes up when you first mine the crystal. It doesn't matter which color you mine. And after doing this, it's best if you go to sleep, okay? So if I would set the time to nighttime, I'm going to go ahead and just use the bed. But I'd recommend, as you're gathering these crystals, it's probably better to gather some of the ores I mentioned earlier too. So if you get some cinnabar ore and amber from the amber bearing stones before you head home and sleep, that's probably better because it kind of becomes you more equipped. Now I've gone to sleep, and as we wake up, we've been granted another message here in the chat. Now when we went to sleep, we also got this item called the Book of Strange Dreams. So the new message says, you awaken from a strange dream. You quickly write it down before the memory fades. So this is what we've apparently written down, this book. So if we open it, it will give us more details on what we do next in Thaumcraft. So it says, I had the strangest dream last night. In the dream, I took 3 of those strange crystals I've been finding and ground them with a handful of redstone in a bowl using a piece of flint. The crystals had to be of different types, but if I did it properly, then the result was a strange glowing dust. In the dream, I took the dust and sprinkled it on a bookcase, but the dream ended before I saw what happened. I wonder, should I do what the dream had shown me? I have the impression the dust was going to reveal something wondrous but dangerous. This is a strange dust which is described that he's going to create in this dream, okay? So, we need a few different types of materials. So first of all, we need 1 redstone. We also need a bowl to create our dust and basically have it in. And then we need 3 crystal types, which I've already prepared in the chest, and it doesn't matter as long as the crystals are different types and not the same. And we also need a piece of flint. These stuff you'll all need to gather. I'm spawning these, but you'll need to get them legit throughout the means of whatever you do in survival mode, basically. So, then, in a crafting bench, in a shapeless crafting recipe, we can go ahead and we can create something called Salis Mundus. So if I just go ahead and get 3 types of these crystals, which don't really matter which type I get, then we can start going ahead and creating this thing. So we would put the crystals basically in any kind of formation just like this, and then we put the redstone in the bottom right with the flint to the left and the bowl in the middle, and we create this Salis Mundus. Okay, so this is the next step. Now let's go ahead and let's get the bookshelf item or stack outside of our chest, and let's place down a bookcase. Now let's right click the bookcase with Salis Mundus, and you can see there's kind of like a glimmer or a shimmer sound that's displayed after it, and then there's this floating book here. So what's this floating book for, you may ask? This is kind of like a mysterious book which is kind of floating on this bookshelf, because we've used the dust on the bookshelf. It's made a sound and then converted it into something special. Basically, this is the main item in Thaumcraft, which is called the Thaumonomicon. Okay, so the Thaumonomicon is basically like a magical book or encyclopedia, which we can use as the base for the mod. So this gives us the book to begin the first steps in the mod, basically. So this is like a guide and a reference manual in Thaumcraft, and we can click on this and go to the first steps. Now, if we go back into the book, this is basically a knowledge tree. Okay, so just like a lot of other mods, this is kind of like a skill tree in an RPG game where we go and where we basically go to advance in the mod. So as we progress through the mod, this skill tree or advancement tree will continue to expand, and we can get deeper into the mod's features. Now, to reach certain levels, we will need to flick through the pages, so you are going to have to go through and read like the first steps, for an example, to actually display the secondary tabs, which have also displayed here now that I've read it. And you'll kind of need to complete certain steps, which are kind of like quests. So this mod kind of adds a quest or task system, which you're going to need to follow in the book to unlock the next few stages in advance. So it's kind of basically like a tier system which we follow with this book. So the first step explains a little bit more about this energy dust, and it will give you a crafting recipe and tell you exactly what you need to be making next in the steps in the mod. First steps, who would have thought that a few sprinkles of dust could have created this marvellous book? It is mostly blank, but it hints at a powerful new form of magic, thaumaturgy. Firstly, I will need to study the magical world that has been shown to me. For what I will need a tool, a Thaumometer, the book calls it. A normal crafting table won't do, however, since the magical energies I need to channel while crafting it are quite delicate. A sprinkling of Salis Mundus on a mundane crafting table should solve that. The book has taught me the proper incantation to use, so it should be a simple matter. To keep myself on track, I will make a list of requirements that need to be met on the first page of each new entry. So we can also click this, which says knowledge totals over here, and we can also click Salis Mundus, which shows us the shapeless crafting recipe that we can create, that we can use to create this item. Okay, so just like we used before, instead of using a bookshelf, we're going to use this Salis Mundus on a crafting bench. So I'm going to place a second one, and if we right click, it makes that kind of fairy dust sound, and it creates this brand new specialized crafting table over here, which is what we need. So you may wonder what this block is. This is the Arcane Workbench, okay? And this is used to craft many different things in Thaumcraft. And you can also use it as a normal crafting table. So technically I could have just used it on my old crafting table because all you need is basically this. You can use it for a multi-purpose block. Now, when the GUI is closed, this crafting table, as you can see, will not return any items that I've put inside it to my inventory. So if I put something in the crafting table in vanilla, it will go back in my inventory once I go out of the interface. So I put 4 leather in, go off the crafting table, I have 4 leather in my inventory. This doesn't do this, so any items you put in the Arcane Workbench will be left in when you leave it. This can be a little bit annoying though, because if you're on a server on multiplayer, it means that only one person can be using the block at a time, so you might actually have to make multiple. Now, a normal crafting bench has a 3x3 window, so it has 9 different slots. This has the same interface, but it has a further 6 different slots here in a 3x3 grid form. Now these are basically each crystal of different color type, and the output slot also has this item counter here where it says 124 available. This is the level of V inside the chunk, so that thing I told you about earlier, which is spelled VIS like Viz, that's the value which is currently available in my current chunk. So for you, the value will be different depending where you are. For an example, if you're in the magical forest, there's going to be a very high level of V in comparison to the rest of the world. Now, once we've created this workbench and completed that, we can go inside our Thaumonomicon book and we can press complete, and it will complete this stage, okay? And then it'll go into the next journal entry. So now it will basically come up with more information. So we've completed that step. We've completed the first step of the mod. So there's knowledge inside this book, which is split into 2 different types. We have observations, just like where it says observation fundamentals. This is basically finding out and scanning what's around you. And then you also have theories, which is understanding the world through thought and practical experimentation in the mod. So these are the different levels which you need to go to next. So you can look at the types of knowledge over here, which is basically what I've just noted to you. There's more information on what theories and observations are. And then also the theory crafting section, which we need to do next. So we need to get scribing tools, which we can craft over here. And we also need a research table next. We need these theories to advance our knowledge, and we need this equipment to actually get these theories. So, as you can see, we need to make ourselves a research table. And there's different researches via aspects. And we also need to create scribing tools. So we'll need a glass file, which we make with glass and clay. And we need an ink sac and a feather. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to craft 2 of these. I'm going to get 2 scribing tools, which I recommend for you to do also. And then next we're going to create the research table. So you may wonder, how do we create a research table? Well, we need to create 2 different tables. And as you can see, we have the wood and stone types. So we would create 2 wood tables, which we can make out of basically a combination of wooden planks with wooden slabs over the top. And when we have 2 of these wood tables, which we can place alongside each other, right click on it with scribing tools, and then we can create a research table. So now we have this new interface over here, which says create theory. And the reason why we created 2 of these scribing tools is so we can put one of them in our inventory and then keep a stack of paper, what we gathered earlier, and just have that inside our inventory so we can kind of have it on the go later in case we need to use it. Then we can go to theory crafting and press complete, and we have finished our next step. As you can see here, it says I should make sure the table has plenty of paper and I have enough ink for my scribing tools. So that's why we also gathered ink. I can now choose to start researching the theory at the top of the page. I will see how much inspiration is available to me during this round of research. So we have 2 different choices of research paths we can follow, and each route will state what knowledge it will grant to the player, and it will be divided between 1 or more research categories. So now we can click on Celestial Observation, okay? I've noticed a link between the phases of the moon and the speed at which the aura replenishes itself. I should investigate the phenomenon further and even expand my investigation to see if other heavenly bodies influence magic. A few minor tweaks to my Thaumometer should enable it to make measurements from objects in the sky. I should remember to carry some paper and scribing tools with me so I can take notes. Measuring the same body or quadrant of the sky more than once a day will not give me new insights. I need to study them over time to measure changes in their aural influence. The notes I gather should come in handy for theory crafting. So as you can see, we have a few different observations over here, and inside the interface of the bench we just created, we can put paper in the top right, and we put our scribing tools here, which should already be in there because you've already right clicked on a table. And then you can press create theory, okay? And as you can see, we can go through different theories over here and click on them, and we can just look at which one we want to go to next. So you're basically using paper to go through and click on different things, and you should just read through these and click on whatever applies to you and what step you think you should press. And then after completing a theory, you press complete theory, and it's as simple as that. So next we're going to go through creating something called the Thaumometer. So we're going to need one of each crystal type for this, and it's best to create 2 Thaumometers. The guide which I was following recommended to create 2. And as you can see, the Thaumometer is this item over here. Now, we need to have glass panes and gold ingots to create these. So this is also another good reason why we gathered glass earlier. But if you have gold with it, then you're already basically at the point where you can make these. Now, remember to make these, we're going to need one of each crystal type too. So we need to have each crystal from our chest ready to use to create these. So for an example, we have the yellow crystal, we have the red crystals, we have the blue crystals, we have the green, we have the white crystals, and also the black ones here too. So now we can go inside the bench here and we can create our recipe. So as you can see, I have a lot of these, so I'm just going to just make multiple of them. And the recipe would be gold ingots around here with the glass in the middle, which should be normal glass. So we're going to put normal glass there. And then place the crystals in their appropriate slots to actually create it. So now everything is working and functioning as it should do. And we have these spinning crystals over here. So when you place the crystals in the right slots and there's an appropriate recipe, you'll see these spinning circles so you know it should be working. So now what we can do is we can create these Thaumometers, and I'm just going to create 2 of them. And then now we have these items. So when we hold in our hand, you can now see when we actually look at items, we have this weird blue glowing dust which kind of appears on stuff. These blue particles and sparkles kind of come off all the objects in the world, and this represent things which we haven't learned about in the mod just yet. So if we hold right click, we can scan an item. Things like crafting tables or chests which have an interface, you have to hold shift and then right click to scan them. And when you scan an object, it says there's nothing new to be learned from this. But when I scanned the crafting bench, it actually scanned something and then something happened in the bottom right hand of my screen. Okay. Now, when we scan something like a chest that has items in, so I could just throw all these items in a chest for an example. When we scan this now, you can see it's just scanned tons of stuff and learned so many new things. That's because we've scanned all the items contained in this chest too. So anything inside a block's inventory will also get scanned when you hold shift and right click to scan on it. So that's also a really quick way to scan multiple things instead of placing them all down on the ground. So as you can see, another cool thing we can do is if we go inside our inventory, we can click on the Thaumometer so it kind of hovers, and then we can place it over an item in our inventory and it will scan the items. As you can see just then, I picked up the Thaumometer and I hovered it over my Thaumonomicon and I scanned it via basically holding it over it in my inventory. If you have the Thaumonomic inventory scanning add-on, which I'd recommend you download too, that will be linked below, then basically you can do this. And when you hover over your items, it will scan those items and you can learn things from them from your inventory too. And when we scan them and we hover over them, it has a few new icons above the items now. You can also scan the spare Thaumometer, so if we created 2, which I suggested, you can use one of them to scan the other and then basically research it. Now, not only can we scan vanilla blocks, but we can also scan mobs, okay? And I think we have to be close enough to mobs, but you can also scan mobs because they have the blue dust in the game which comes off them. Basically anything with blue particles on them lets us scan them. So we can go ahead and we can scan skeletons, spiders, witches, creepers, whatever you're lucky enough to fall upon, rabbits, literally everything. I'd recommend in this stage of progression in the mod, just go around the world and find as many custom and unique blocks that you can find and scan them all. Scan any items or any items in chests and any new mobs which you fall upon in the world and things like plants and items. When you've scanned a lot of them, then we can move on to the next stage, but you're basically looking to research as many things here with the Thaumometer. So now that we've gone around scanning everything, we've basically unlocked all of the requirements for the next stage, Celestial Observation, pretty quickly, so we can go ahead and complete this. Now, once you complete Celestial Observation, which we've just done, this enables you to scan the sun and the moon, okay? So we could actually look now at the sun and the moon around in the world and actually scan those too. So currently I can't actually see the moon in my current position, but we can scan this Enderman. let's just set the time to daytime, and then there should be the sun in the sky. And we can look at the sun, and we can scan it, and it says you've already studied that today. So you can only scan the sun and the moon once per day. If you've already scanned something, it'll say nothing new can be learned from this, if you've already scanned it before. Now, the items in the middle of the research station show a few different blocks. This is because this research station is next to this craft inventory created, and it's also next to a bookcase. So let's give a little bit more information on the research table, which we touched on a little bit earlier. So you can see, as well as these blocks here which are displayed, which are nearby, which actually what this does is, providing that the table is up to 4 blocks away from other connecting blocks, it will actually detect other blocks nearby, which will give the table bonuses, okay? And there's also these 5 light bulbs up here, which you may have noticed. These are basically called inspiration, and as you progress throughout the mod, you'll gain more and more ideas, and items will give you further research options. So the bookshelf will give you more options in the fundamental section, the crucible gives more alchemy options, the runic matrix gives more infusion, the golem press gives more golemancy options, the brain in the jar gives more eldritch options, the beacon gives a bonus to oromancy, the focal manipulator gives more oromancy options, and the enchanting table gives options which use levels for research. Now, each time you use these bonuses, for an example, if I click the bookshelf here and then press create theory, it will use one of these light bulbs, which is one of our inspiration points. But this will help to focus your research on a specific field. Now, we've already created our first theory, we've already been through that a little bit earlier, but if we just do this again, you can see we can click on a piece of paper and we can click on an option between the two. Now, we only had one option to click on there, but now we have 2 options. Now, completing these theories will use up these light bulbs which are displayed above, and any of these theories that we complete will contribute to our progress in the mod. Now, you can see we do have an inventory viewer on the right hand side, so you can actually see the inventory blocking all of the values, but we have a few different values over here like golemancy and fundamentals, which gives us more information on what we're doing. Now, each page that you click has a different cost. For an example, this one shows 2 light bulbs and this one shows 1 light bulb. Basically, different ones have a different cost and it affects how your experience progresses. Now, basically, you go through all of these pages until you run out of theory points, and then it says complete theory. So basically, you can only use a specific number of light bulbs, which is 5, before you finish the theory. Now, if we go back into our Thaumonomicon, we can now press complete, okay? And now we've completed the first step section. This is because we've now completed the theory crafting section. We've completely finished this and we've already been through everything, so now we can move on to the next section of the mod. Now, when a current research is in progress and you go off the interface, you can see it actually puts a scroll here to show that something's actually already is a work in progress. So now we can click on Discovering Alchemy. So this is the next section which talks about alchemy in the mod. Now, once you've been through the first steps and stages inside Thaumcraft, you can click on Types of Knowledge over here, and you'll be able to see which mode of progress you've actually made, or what level of progress in each classification you've made so far. So if you click on the book and go on the section which I've gone, it'll open up all the fields that you've discovered and the progress currently at which you're at. So you can see all these different observations over here and theories that we've progressed in so far. Now, you'll need a certain level of a lot of these different sections as you progress through the mod. And once you use these levels, they'll be deducted and you'll need to gain more levels in them again. So you're basically spending it kind of like XP levels to get a reward out of it. You'll also see something called Aspects of Essentia. So this is basically something which you've discovered by scanning and their combinations. So scanning more throughout the mod using the item we created earlier will help you find new types and combinations which will go inside this field. And these are those icons which appear above a lot of the different items that you hover over inside your inventory. So if we hover over items and use a Thaumometer, you can see these little icons which appear above them. These are the different aspects of Essentia inside the mod, and that's what they mean. So you can go inside the book and have a look at that section to gain a bit more information and understanding of what those are. So this video is already extremely long, so I'm going to cover only a few more sections before we close out the video. Now, the next one is Alchemy. So we go inside Discovering Alchemy, and we can press Complete, and once we press Complete, we can go on to the next section. So basically, we need to create something called a crucible. Now, a crucible is kind of like a cauldron in a way, and basically we use that Salis Mundus item which we created earlier, and if you're in survival mode, you'll most likely need to keep creating this, and we'll right click Salis Mundus on a cauldron. So to create a crucible, we just need a standard Minecraft cauldron, and that's why we actually gathered one earlier, and I told you to get one in the chest. That's because now we're actually going to use this. So I'm going to place it next to everything which we've already got, and then right click on it. And as you can see, we throw some fairy dust on it, and it's going to turn into a crucible. So we can also shift right click on the crucible to gain the knowledge from it using our Thaumometer. And then, now we have a crucible. So now we can press complete, and we've completed that step. So now we're on the first level to go into alchemy. Now, if the crucible's close enough to the research table, which we've tried to do, it needs to be within 4 blocks of its range. We can go in and now select it, because it's now appearing as an icon on the table. This gives us more bonus research while we're doing all of the theories. And we use the crucible, and we can insert items into it and break them down to their core aspects and then combine them to make new items. So basically, you need to fill this thing with water. Okay, so it's just like a cauldron. You need to fill this thing up with water and then break some blocks below it and have a heat source. So in our situation, we're just going to use lava because it's the most basic one in Minecraft. So we're just going to create a lava source below it so it has some kind of heat. And now you can see it actually starts creating these bubbling particles, and you can hear a bubbling sound. That's because it's actually working. Now you need to right click on them or drop them into the crucible to use it. So we can right click all this lapis inside, and we can now burn it down to its core elements. Or we can jump over it and drop it inside the crucible. Now this thing overflows when you drop it, so you need to be careful. This whole thing's just bubbling over right now. But we can drop this in too, and you can see it creates this weird purple steam stuff which goes up. Now you can use something later on inside the mod which are called goggles of revealing, and if you wear those, you can actually tell which aspects are currently inside the crucible. If we go close enough, it shows us this kind of overlay which tells us above it with these 2 little icons, and that's something which you'll get a little bit later in the mod depending on how far into it you go. But remember, if you right click on the crucible with any item, you're going to lose it, so you need to be careful. And now you can see we have 500 of this specific element inside it. Now you can create specific items, and you're going to need this when you're actually completing the next few steps, okay? So we have 10 Ignis, Lux, and Potentia. So we're going to drop this all inside. So just drop these inside, and be careful not to drop them in the lava if you've kind of placed the lava in the open like me. And it'll take a few seconds to actually go inside because they each have to boil and go inside. But you can see, if we have the goggles on, we can see exactly what's contained inside. And we can drop these in. And this combination I gave you... Oh, okay, things are burning. We need to be careful. This combination I gave you is for yellow nitor. So now we're just going to leave this thing to boil. And you can see the levels of what's contained inside are actually currently going down. So that means the process is cooking it. You also should add 1 glowstone dust in there too. Okay, so I'm going to drop this in here. And it's going to kind of overflow. And then we're going to get those purple particles we did earlier. We're going to right click with our glowstone dust next. And basically a puff will appear and it'll overflow. And usually you would be given your yellow nitor. But I've already put stuff inside the cauldron before and messed around with it, which is why I didn't get it that time. But you'll get something called yellow nitor, okay? Which, when we right click on it on the ground, it creates this weird element which is kind of hovering about. And if we shift and right click, we can also remove it manually, okay? And it says there seems to be too much flux around, and it's created this kind of rift here, okay, which is something I didn't explain earlier. So this is called a flux rift, okay, and flux is generated when you release essentia into the world without filtering it. This is basically a bad aura which kind of lingers around a chunk, and too much flux can cause less V to generate in the area, so this is bad, okay? So this thing's just opened up because I've just basically emptied this crucible. Now if we use our Thaumometer and look at the top left of the screen, you'll see there's a meter for flux, and that shows how much extra flux was let loose into the atmosphere, because you can see it's above the standard level where the small gold pieces are. And the small dark sliver above that meter, which is a different colour to the pink level below it, that's the amount of flux which is being let into the atmosphere. We can also scan this as well, because this rift is kind of opened, so we've just scanned that too. If there's anything left over inside the crucible, you can also right click with quartz silvers, and that will also gather them into Vis crystals in your inventory. Now if you do build up enough flux, it may cause a problem and you may need to actually move to a different location for your base, so you need to be careful with all of these different things in the mod. Now that yellow nitor stuff we placed down, you just basically use it as a light source in your world, but not only this, you can also place it under things. So if we didn't have this lava here, for an example, if I would just bucket this up and collect this lava, we could place the yellow nitor underneath the crucible and use this to heat up the crucible water. So we could also use this as a heat source as well as a light source in the world. So that's still pretty useful stuff to gather. So now if we right click and we can go on discovering alchemy, we can take a look at everything else. Now, there should now be a new tab called Alchemy on the Thaumonomicon, okay? So when we go inside the Thaumonomicon books interface, we now have Alchemy, so we can now go through this tree and begin certain research, okay? So we can now advance through the Alchemy tree throughout this book. So you've gained the basics of Thaumcraft throughout this video. I've showed you exactly how to get into it, how to get started, all of the materials, what they do, and a lot of the most basic processes in Alchemy, all of the world generation, and a lot of the items you're going to need to start off with. Now, I am going to link a guide in the description below, which you should definitely check out and continue reading. This is a really great website called Minecraft Guides, and this is what I followed to learn all my information for this video. So if you want to go from this point that we've got to and continue going, if you need some more help, then do read that guide. But basically it's the same throughout the rest of the mod. I've showed you basically everything up to the alchemy section. From here you would just keep advancing, go through the sections, doing what it says and following all the entries, and then you continue and go to the next section. So we'd go to Oromancy, Infusion, Artifice, and then finally Golomancy. And you can click on the different sections here as you progress and then go through these separate trees too and do your research. So this is the basics of Thaumcraft. I really enjoyed Thaumcraft. This has been kind of me doing a deep dive into it because I've never really understood the mod until now, so I really wanted to dedicate some time to actually learn it and get into it and do a mod showcase, which was really long today. This has been probably double the length of normal videos. This has been an extremely long one because this mod is very hard to explain, and we've only discovered about a quarter of the mod. I could have done a video like 4 hours on this mod because it's so in depth. So if you like the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe. Become a member if you want to get my mods and join the Minecraft server by clicking the join button below. And if you have any questions about the mod which you didn't understand about the video, drop them in the comments below, and also let me know in the comments if there's anything I've missed or didn't explain very well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.